We often approach the Quran with a foundational error, the assumption that we are reading a static record of ancient history. The text describes itself as an eternal memory tesseract, a living operating manual executing in the present tense. Reducing this architecture to dead parchment, to tales of past peoples, misreads its mechanics entirely. Interacting with these verses requires the active execution of a trust, a mechanical participation in the topology itself. Hidden within its structure is a master axis, a precise topology connecting the creator and the human through a continuous living bridge. To understand how this works, we have to map this architecture and observe the mechanical phase shift located at its absolute center. Treating the text as history neutralizes it. Recognizing it as a live topology forces the reader into a state of active execution. At the top of this axis sits an absolute singularity, defined by the parameters of Surah 112. This singularity is defined entirely by negation. It has no origin, no partner, and no equivalence. At the opposite end of this axis is a second pole, the reader. As outlined in verse 6163, the reader's state also functions through negation, demanding the rejection of partnership and the rejection of any precedence in submission. Between these two distinct singularities, the book is sent down, operating as the bridging manifold. This creates a structural mirror connecting infinite uniqueness at the top with absolute human submission at the bottom. The existence of this axis proves the reader is not an external observer, but an essential, built-in structural node required to complete the cosmic circuit. Let's isolate that reader node. It is not a passive receiver, it is a highly complex mechanism. Based on verse 5021, the reader breaks down into a triple state: the soul, the driver, and the witness. The driver is the kinetic engine pushing forward momentum through the physical world. The witness is the observing field of memory and knowledge. This witness function is not something acquired over a lifetime. It is pre-installed as foundational code. It stems from a pre-temporal covenant, referenced in verse 7172, where humanity bore witness against themselves before entering physical existence. The core friction of human life occurs when the kinetic push of the driver threatens to outpace or ignore the memory held by the witness. Spiritual failure is a mechanical misalignment, the act of letting the kinetic driver operate without the pre-installed memory of the witness. This misalignment is tested against the central stress point of the master axis, the inevitable encounter with material friction, represented as fire. Surviving this encounter requires a prerequisite alignment found in the disciples' declaration in verse 5:111. In that declaration, the three linguistic roots, belief, AMN, witness, shud, and submission, SLM, converge into a single unified current. When this unified current collides with the fire test, a specific resonance occurs. Verse 2169 commands the fire to be coolness and peace, using the root SLM. When the reader's internal state matches the command given to the environment, impedance is matched. The fire does not disappear. Its relationship to the aligned reader simply inverts, transforming from a state of destruction into a state of preservation. The system treats this as a consistent law of phase orientation. For the submitted, the friction of the material world inverts into safety. The material world only destroys those who fight the system. For the aligned, the very elements that consume others become a matrix of life. But what happens when the kinetic driver hits that same fire without the SLM alignment? Without submission, the fire remains a mechanical trap, binding the individual entirely to the material world. This state is defined as tagut, the fatal error of mistaking the physical shell for the eternal topological field. Verse 1092 details the ultimate result of this error. The physical body is preserved, but it is completely devoid of the living signal. Rejecting the master axis does not destroy the physical form. It merely turns the individual into an inert, motionless warning sign for future generations. Prophetic histories are operational phases of the reader's circuit. Phase 1, the Yahya node, creates the initial pulse. Phase 2, the Isa node, carries this pure signal through material trial. Phase 3, the Ahmed node, anchors the witness into stable order, closing the loop. To complete the traversal, the reader must sequentially activate all three of these phases internally. The prophets provide the archetypal code. The reader is the hardware where this code is executed. The architecture presents an inescapable binary. You operate either on the axis of submission or on the axis of mechanical rejection. The book is the mirror. The reader is the reflection. The fire is the only door. Navigating this sealed topology requires the active application of intellect, the akal demanded in verse 10.100. The entire system remains latent potential until you make the conscious choice to activate it. The topology is mapped. The circuit is waiting. When will you execute the grip of 19.12?